Hey, hello and welcome. Welcome to the Connectors. Hi, Quentin.
Hi Joe,
Chris.
hi Chris, how are you doing?
Doing very, very well, guys. Thanks for the invitation.
Very welcome. I'm very excited to introduce our guest today, Chris Kulbaba. And he is a business developer and talent connector. And I would love to share his bio with you and tell you a little bit about him and why he's on the show today. So, Chris has been involved with people and connecting them together his entire working life. In early days, he was a unionized labor advocate working as an elected full-time chairperson for a local manufacturing company. After 17 years there, he was able to transition into a government-funded role and was a key contributor in the introduction and evaluation of the Second Career Program with the Ontario government. Chris was able to connect stakeholders together to create a network of action centers across southwestern Ontario, was able to fund an entire cohort of students at Fanshawe in the RPN program, and has since transitioned into public speaking, facilitation, training, web creation, case management, and other titles. Currently, he is technical lead for a new local startup using AI tools to dramatically increase business productivity called The Second Brain. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you for such a warm introduction. Thank you very much, Jolyn.
Welcome. I really hope I said your last name correctly, and I should have asked you that before we started.
No, that was absolutely perfect. Thank you very much.
Great. Glad to hear it.
Wow, you've got a ton of different experience.
Well, one of the things that I found in my life is constant and consistent curiosity. The adventures I've been on have really happened by me just saying, "Oh, I wonder what might happen if I tried that." And as I tell folks all the time, if you volunteer for things, whether you know what you're doing or not, now you're too far in for them to kick you out, so you better just make it work. And there have been some great wins and there have been some amazing catastrophes. So part and parcel is there's an old saying to fall down 7 times and stand up 8. So I'm still standing and still falling and still getting up.
That's great. And I met Chris at an LEDC event in London, Ontario, which was a networking event. And from the moment I met him, I was totally excited because he's very enthused. He's a master connector, which is what he calls himself on LinkedIn, which obviously I was intrigued by, wanted to know more. And he was so willing just to give me, multitude of resources and information and just tips and tricks in terms of technology and things that even Quentin and I were using for the show. So I truly appreciate that. And you're the type of people we want to have on this show. I'd like to know what connection means to you.
Oh, what an interesting question. And it's such a dynamic question. I think that as human beings, one thing that became glaringly clear through this COVID adventure we've all been on as a globe is that human beings do need connection. We are not a species that does well solo. Of course, there are some people that do like to just be alone, and there's no problems with that. And there's other people that can be anything but alone. And for the other 99% of us, we do need some level of connection. So really, to me, that connection is a sharing of energy. It's a sharing of ideas and ideals. I feel that as we're going through life, we all have a journey, we all have a story, we all have moments where we get to be the hero, and there's moments where we're not. So I think it's really important to reach out and have what I and other people have coined as a servant mindset. How can I help? What can I do?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're helping someone else, a couple things are going to happen. Number one, you're going to feel good. And that's just a byproduct of helping somebody. Number two, usually you're going to learn something new. Even if you've done it multiple times, there's going to be some addition into what you are doing. And the last thing that happens is you're going to have an abundance in your life. I have found over and over again that the more I give, the more I seem to receive. So I just tend to try to give everything away. Maybe that sounds counterintuitive, but it allows me more connections, deeper connections, and more gratitude for the connections I have and have yet to make.
That's great. No, I love that. And you know what? That's a good point. You said it doesn't bother you to give that much, right? Where some people, I think I've noticed people who give, but then they're always complaining about the people they give to. right? Because I think
Well,
they're not getting anything in return, or they're expecting something in return. And, if you give freely, or you give to the people that I
yeah.
think are going to sort of reciprocate, that's the difference.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a very old saying. Now I'm going to modernize it because it's quite misogynistic. It starts off by saying men are not mountains. Well, there's other people than men on the planet now, but I'd like to say
Thank
that
you for saying
people,
that.
yeah, very, very well. People are not mountains. And the crux of that statement is that mountains never meet. They stand there, they stand alone, and they stand
Mm.
forever. People are not mountains. We're meant to meet and go forward. I would challenge anybody that has a servant or a giving mindset, if they feel they're not getting enough back, maybe that's a signal that you're not giving enough away, or perhaps you're giving it in such a way that people take it and leave. They haven't connected with you.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm.
that's another part of the process. Is one of the things I've asked people is how do you feel? What is the one thing we spoke of today that really just hit it out of the park for you? What was the best thing we discussed? As a coach, as a consultant, as a business person, I ask that question consistently. I don't know what the best part that you had today was, and I'm not interested in accolades. I want to know, what are we going to give you more the next time?
Mm.
And I feel that creating that type of a mindset and that type of experience lets people say, "Well, that Kulbaba guy is not, although he is ruggedly handsome, he's also quite generous." So they tend to come back.
Yeah, that's it. And you were talking about like the wins that can happen and the
Yeah.
challenges that can be in our way.
Oh yeah.
And that brings us to something that we have on the podcast, which is our wins of the week, where
Mm-hmm.
we share something that has
Mm-hmm.
gone well this week or
Mm-hmm.
over the weekend, and fails of the week, and what perhaps didn't go so well, and how did we handle it. So I don't know, do you have a win or a fail of the week?
Absolutely. It just literally happened yesterday. Now there's still lots of days in the week left, so I can still fail. That's okay. To me, that when you fall down, it's actually, well, it is painful, but it really is actually an ability to find a certain way not to do something. So it's never necessarily a failure. It's a lesson if you take it as such. So I was
Mm.
helping one of my clients, and they were getting increasingly frustrated trying to understand how to use the process, the project management process that was inherent in the second brain build that we were doing. So I
Mm.
did realize this person was a baker. So I stopped trying to talk in the way I understood, and I started asking, "Well, can we think of this like a recipe? So what ingredients do we have, and what are we going to bake?" And it was a really neat reframing where finally they were able to say, "I think I got it." And then they got excited. And we were supposed to be done 2 hours before. But they were so
Mm.
excited. I said, "Well, then let's keep going. If you've got the energy and you've got the ideas, let's march on." And it was from the low to the high. It was wonderful. It was a very interesting swing that we both experienced. So, Quentin, what a wonderful question. I'm glad that I literally had an immediate answer for it.
And I love how you transformed that through you connecting with him, through you transforming the metaphor and
Yeah.
and presenting it to something that he can grasp better. I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah.
It's one thing to communicate, but if we're communicating in a language that the recipient doesn't understand. So several years ago, I used to be very emphatically attached to the lugubriousness of my own dulcet tones. So using big words, right?
You like the sound of
So,
his voice, dear
Yes.
listener.
well,
Yeah.
and I was starting in public
Thank you for
speaking,
dumbing
and
it down for us.
well,
Yeah.
simplifying it, right? But that was my lesson, and that was several years ago, where a professional public speaker who I'd asked, I said, "Hey, can you give me a tip?" And he says, "Yeah, get out of public speaking." I said, "Well, that's not much of a tip." He says, "Look, you're using words that cost $1, $2, $3, $5. Those are
Mm.
wonderful $5 words. There's lots of letters in them, and they're very complex. And if your audience only has $10 to buy your words with, they're going to be buying two words. So if your words only cost a penny or a nickel, they're going to have an option and they're going to have an opinion. They can buy more words. I thought that was one of the best chunks of advice I've ever had. I consistently try to remember that. Not everybody wants to buy what you're selling, so you need to adjust into something that's familiar and what they want. The old analogy is the glass half full is the glass half empty. Don't forget, you can refill the glass.
Yeah.
And that, what a great opportunity.
Speaking of
in
that,
the way he shared with you, right? Like, so you had the ability to look at it and go, oh, okay, I didn't know that. Maybe I can tweak how I speak a bit. And
that connection allowed me to connect to so many others in such a deeper way, and then to share that connection going forward. So it really is your podcast here. This interview is all about what I'm about, is connecting and allowing people to see and observe and perhaps take a little bit into themselves. We all weave this tapestry of our lives, all these different colored threads. Well, what if your rug is somewhat beige? Do you really want to be the red thread? Then again, maybe that red thread is exactly what that rug needs, a little splash. But you're never going to have it if you don't connect.
Yeah, exactly. And just add back to what you were saying, you were so willing to share with me. And right there, I was like, this guy needs to be on the podcast.
Absolutely.
You texted me after the networking event and said, this guy's got so much information. He's sharing so much. He's so cool. We've got to chat with him. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
How about you, Joe? Wins and fails, man?
I'm just going to do, actually, I have one in the same. And yes, I was away for an evening with my mother last week. And I always do my best as I mature to try to approach my parents a little bit differently every time. If I'm spending one-on-one time with them, I'm trying to find out more about them, because I feel in my younger self, I didn't do that as much. There was a lot of things I probably ignored or didn't understand, or just tried to move forward with life without. But I feel I'm at a stage of life I'm really trying to understand where my parents were coming from and give them a little bit of space and patience to be who they are. And there was a couple times I got a little bit frustrated throughout that. I don't spend a lot of alone time with my mom, so just so you know. And a few times I just thought I could have been a little bit more patient, but then I was also proud of the times that I was able to just sort of sit back and ask her questions that I typically don't ask her, or sit in a moment with a response that I didn't like from her, or, that kind of thing. So it's a nice stage to start to get into with my folks. But yeah, I felt a win and a fail in the same. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Opportunity for growth. Yeah.
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 Well,
what's your
my fail was that my power went out this morning, which was a real pain. So I didn't have power for 2 hours, but it's okay. I cleaned the kitchen and all that jazz. And my win is so cool. I got news today that I was in a documentary about English-speaking people that settle in Quebec. And that was like 2 years ago. And I told some stories about my experiences. And I just got notice today that the National Film Board is going to be showing this in like 2 weeks' time.
No way.
Yeah.
Congrats.
And they don't show films that they haven't produced themselves. So this is amazing.
Oh, and awesome. Where is it going to be available to watch? Do you know?
It is called Waves of Change, and I will make sure to put the link for that in our notes. And I have to give a big shout out to the English Language Arts Network, because they provided funding for this project, and Guy Rogers was the producer director. So awesome. Super exciting. Yeah.
Congratulations. Oh, I put my hand up. I didn't mean to. I was looking for like a clap emoji.
Oh, awesome. I was like, we got very formal there. Do you want to ask a question?
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah. Oh, you got it. Okay.
I think those are both such fantastic wins. Those are really great, Jolene. I resonate with that on such a deep level with your parents. I am very lucky that we did not have any Romani gypsies when I was a youth, because I'm pretty sure I would have been traded off for a bag of beans or something. I was not a great son. until I learned
Wow.
how to be. And my parents are so
Mm,
impactful to my life and my journey. I spend a lot of time with them now because they're in their 70s, and
mhm.
Mm.
I'm going to miss complaining about them one day. So I'm
Exactly.
trying to get all my complaints in today. Not really. But you made an interesting point, Jolyn, as we transcend this arc of life, how much our lens changes. And I thought
Mhm.
that was a
Mm.
beautiful and very wonderful, warm reflection. Quentin, I am astounded that number one, that there was a film made about English speakers in Quebec. A tongue in cheek, probably not Quebecois driven, because there's a very heavy line. I mean, the Meech Lake Accord was still in my lifetime. There was a lot of very
Mhm.
difficult conversations about the Quebecois identity, Francophones, Acadians out on the coast. So, what a wonderful opportunity to
Mhm.
represent the Anglophones in Strangers in a Strange Land. What do you say?
Yeah, the aim is for inclusivity and advocacy around being multilingual, about being cosmopolitan. So it's our attitude is saying, isn't it wonderful? Coming back to your metaphor about the threads that we weave in our lives,
Mhm.
isn't it wonderful that we're weaving this magical carpet with all of these different cultures and
Yeah.
languages and people represented? Which is very different, as you say, to the Quebecois mentality, which is very
Mhm.
protectionist, yes.
Mhm.
Well, I think that it stems from a long history of having to carve out that identity and to be very proud of who they are. And it's not, to me, about disallowing connections, but allowing connections and bridges with a traditional sense of identity, which must be difficult when you're a small percentage of a nation. What a wonderful film! What a wonderful! I'm really looking
Mhm.
forward to hearing what it has to say.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
me
Thank
too.
you.
It's great. And
But it's not
just
about me, so let's
No,
bring it back
no,
to
I
no.
was
Chris,
like switching
please.
gears.
Yeah.
Please.
Switching gears. We should have a little fun noise effect for that. Call it switching gears.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
anyway, idea.
good idea.
This is also where we come up with our ideas as we're having conversations with our guests. Yeah. Chris, you and I have talked quite a bit about technology and
Yes.
AI and the direction that it's going. I'd
Yes.
love to hear more about the second brain and
Yeah.
this new
Yeah.
thing
Yes,
you're working on.
please.
Mhm.
So it's not a creation of mine per se. There's a gentleman named Tiago Forte who has designed the para model, the PARA for the project you're working on, and that will be involved in an area. So an area is an evergreen thing. A project is a beginning and ending thing
Mhm.
in that area. So the
Mm,
area might be communication. The project might be our episode today with the connectors. And the resources you're going to use might be the software, might be the script. And when we're done with it, we're not going to toss it away. It's still very important, but we may archive it, and that is the A portion. There's another system, GTD, simply getting things done, about managing your tasks and creating a streamlined approach to keeping the important things at the front, measuring your progress, daily, weekly, monthly tasks. And again, things come up and things go down. There's several different types of software. What I've been concentrating on is using one platform called Notion, which is very robust, which is just a fantastic repository
mm,
for this process. And I'm enveloping, so the Notion is about keeping things in line. So if you could think, that's the left-hand side of your brain. Well, we got the other side too. We've got our creative part. So taking notes. How do we take notes? Why do we take notes? So many people think that note taking is a construct of writing down every single word. No, there's some systems. The Cornell note system, I'm not sure if the listeners or yourselves are familiar, but I'll give a very brief description. You take a
mhm,
piece of paper and you draw a line across the bottom quarter, the bottom third, and then you draw the top half and split it. So when you're taking your notes, you're taking the highlighted points, you're taking the references on those two. What I like to do is separate the bottom half and look at the resources, how I'm going to use it, and how it made me feel. So I've amended it a little bit. But the
Mm.
Cornell note system, it's not my invention, but it's a very useful tool. So there are some other softwares such as Obsidian, Evernote. There's dozens. You really want to find one that works for you. So there's two areas here. There's an accumulation of personal knowledge. I want to get healthy. I want to develop a deeper relationship with my parents. I want to remind myself to get this book and do that reading. And then there is the business knowledge or the business process. That's your paramodeling, getting things done. How they collide and coincide, you're going to be utilizing the external. Second brain is also referred to in medical terminology as your endocrine system and different nerve systems. We're not talking about that per se, but we're talking about an external cognitive process that's going to kind of do all the scut work for you, all the remembering, all the tasks, writing down checklists and things like that. So our process is somewhat to build an external second brain and to communicate with people. My thought is that we're going to give them some productivity. We're going to compress the time on tasks.
Mm.
So if we saved you 15 minutes a day, and that equates to about an hour a week. So Quentin, what would you do at the end of the year if you had a whole extra week? What would you do? Still
What
got
could
the
I
same stuff
do
done?
with
Yeah.
a
But what would you do with a
week?
week?
That's when you say it like that, that sounds like a
Mm.
huge chunk of time that would be very
It
valuable
is.
just from a workflow process that tweaks my work during the day and it shows me how I can improve.
Yeah.
Is there a feedback
Yeah.
mechanism within it? Like I've used
Well,
Notion, but I don't
you
know your
you're
platform.
you're going to come back at the end of each week and review, well, what worked. So did this work?
Okay.
Did I do that? So you're going to be building habits in there as well. So there's
Mm.
another a part of this
So you're like
atomic
doing like
habits.
an agile kind of sprints, and you're sort
Correct.
of, yeah, okay,
Yeah, great.
But if
cool.
we're staring at our feet, we're only going to know exactly where we are. We need to look up and look around a bit. If I put my head down and started walking, and I'm walking for days at a time, and I look up and I thought I was going to see Quentin, but I'm going west instead of east, I mean, that really is very counterproductive. I mean, I had a lot of energy, I had a lot of motion in the wrong direction. So it's very
Mm.
important to review at the end of the week. Well, this worked and this doesn't, simply because we're giving you the second brain system does not mean that you're not going to personalize it into your own unique circumstances. Maybe somebody wants to learn a little bit more about cooking per se. Wonderful channel if you're into cooking, sous vide everything. I love Guga. He's a really great guy. Does lots of crazy experiments, like cooking an entire steak in a pot of butter. Like it's just nuts. But he actually butter aged steak for something like 6 months. I mean, the guy's a bit of a kook,
Mm.
but it's
What?
fast. I'd rather watch him do that than me try it. That's
Yeah.
expensive, and I want to eat the steak. I can put that in there. So utilizing the second brain, Gantt charts are not sexy. There's nothing interesting about a Gantt chart, but what you do find interesting is you can create, for an example, specific example, a bookmarks page. And that bookmarks page can have a page, and I can say, I want to go into my cooking areas. And then I can have toggle lists that just flick up and down, so I'm not taking a lot of space. Oh, I like
Mm.
my sous vide recipes. Oh, I want to find more. What's Gordon Ramsay got to tell me about this week? What's Jamie Oliver doing? So you can use these to become more efficient, even in looking for things you've already saved. You want to learn to categorize, prioritize, segment, project manage, and hack your own life.
Amazing.
Wow.
Right.
So
Yeah,
you mentioned Tiago Forte as sort of the
yeah,
pioneer in this, and what
yeah.
would be, is there a difference between what he's established and what you're trying to do and where you're
Well,
trying to take this, or
there are several people that have tried similar things like this. I'm not necessarily a pioneer per se, but what I'm trying to do is not only learn this, but then distribute that knowledge. It's marrying different systems. It's figuring out how do we do things utilizing artificial or augmented intelligence. Just read an article today. So it's interesting. There's a young lady who created an avatar of herself, not her, that it looks an awful lot like her, and filled it with some dialogue, and you can date her for $1 a minute.
Ooh.
I'm not going to tell you how much money reportedly this woman's made.
Isn't it called Tinder?
No, this is all
OnlyFans.
virtual. This is all virtual.
Okay.
So
Good
you remember
Lord.
the movie where the man fell in love with his phone? It wasn't too long ago, but this is very similar to that. So people are using this technology in really, well, self-serving ways, I'll say. I mean, that's an interesting social experiment. There was another young lady that told her family she was traveling the world, and all she was doing was inserting herself into different pictures, never left her living room for a month. So we've come into this.
She really didn't like family dinner.
Well, that's one way to get out of it. I mean, for me, just say you got a flu bug or something. No, I'm off to France. Thank you. Okay. There's a lot of things that people can do with this. However, the argument to me always is who benefits. When I was in the union, that's a question that I would always ask. Somebody would come to me with a question, and I used to call it rep shopping. So I want you to change this. And I would say to myself quietly, well, who benefits? Is this for you, or is this for the membership, or is this for the company? Who benefits? And unfortunately, quite often it was not for anyone but themselves, which is human nature, and that's fine. AI takes this to a whole nother level. Who benefits? So this woman creating this avatar that people can date. Well, all these men aren't lonely anymore. They just have to sign over a lot of money to virtually date her for a minute at a time. Okay. Which is interesting to me, but it dives into connection. What is connection?
Totally.
Yeah, it can go a whole bunch of directions.
I can chat with her, I can get a relationship with her, I can start developing feelings.
Yeah.
But is she telling her end client, actually, by the way, it's a chatbot? Sorry, guys, I'm not flicking.
I believe she markets it that it is virtual.
Wow.
So the other
part this connection is feeding the end client with enough connection that they keep coming back and they keep.
So to come to our primary brain, we all do things as human beings based on emotion. And that's why it's so difficult for us to understand sociopaths and psychopaths, because a sociopath does the wrong thing, even though they know it's wrong, they feel guilty. But the psychopathy has nothing. So that's why they lack very empathy. Mysterious.
Yeah.
They have no humanity, what we would describe as humanity inside of them. So then how do we come to this model where people are sharing with a virtual construct, but I can tell her all my secrets and she won't judge me? She could teach me how to speak another language. And I could surprise my wife.
She can't reach out and touch me though. Like, so and this is where I have a little bit of a problem with, like, for example, I've been in some, I guess, situationships, I would call them, because they didn't feel like a relationship. They were all through the phone, and people had this aversion to meeting in person at times. And I always thought, well, isn't that what the goal is to get to, is to meet the person and start connecting as humans together. But some people, I think that scares them. And so I could see there be part of the population that might like this option. But at what point, if you're true.
What about teaching children where they can do homework with a cyber nanny?
Oh,
so now,
totally.
now you're getting into some weird stuff here. Where again, I don't know, Jolene, if you and I spoke about the pen, or Quentin, if we spoke about the pen analogy that I had. So people are asking me, well, what do you think of AI? Aren't you scared of it? I said, are you scared of a pen? Oh, no. Well, why not? I mean, I can, if I was very violent, I could stab you in the eye and kill you. Not that I would. I mean, that's not me, not my jam. Jolene, you have lovely hair. I am bereft of said locks, but you could use it to hold up your hair.
Yeah.
You could use it to write a song. Or Quentin, you could use it to write the next proposal to the subsequent film about being the English speaker in Quebec. So there's many things you can do. Music, poetry. I could draw a cityscape, a landscape, my worst fears. I can journal them. Or I could have used it to create the atom bomb. Or I could have conscripted thousands of people to their death in different wars. Or I could have signed an execution paper. So the pen is not evil, good, or bad. The pen is a tool, much like AI. So for me, it's not about being cautious of AI. It's about learning all that it can do so that I can then be prepared. When somebody tries to do something that I may not agree with, I'm going to be able to see some patterns involved in that. So robocalls is another bad thing of AI. You can program it to speak. So all these calls from people trying to get money out of me, I can pre-program all the arguments in there. No, that wasn't me. That was this software. I'd prefer to use it for productivity to give Quentin an extra week where he can go to Bali or do whatever he would like. Jolynn, you can have a whole week with your mom. The gift is
Yay.
yours.
The gift that keeps
A
on
whole
giving.
week.
Over and over and over.
I'm just blown away by this. I didn't realize
Wow.
how like all the interconnectedness this could have with different things. Like you mentioned, the marrying systems. That's like I find even where I work right now, there's sometimes issues with new technology coming in, and they didn't consider all these other technologies and tools that we currently use before they implemented it. But you're saying you know a lot of how these other tools work and working, how they're working together.
Yeah, that's where the future is integrations, or taking what mobile technology has really taken over in the last few years because it's portable. We have cell phones now that are miniaturized laptops. Smart TVs are just a really large cell phone. That's how intelligent the phones and the TVs are, but they're dumb because they only do exactly what you tell them. Now taking some of those mobile apps, integrating them into native internet web-based formats, which allows greater connectivity, coupled with a language model that can learn from the input of the users to create quicker ties. Now we're getting into some space age, very Asimov, George Orwell, thought police type of things.
I can connect with this idea of systems and take it a little bit further in the Orwellian. I read an article, I don't remember if it was like Harvard Business Review or something, I'll try find it, but it was saying that the next president of the United States will be an AI elected president. That there will be so much supporting this person and the system of running for presidency and the process of running for presidency, that everyone will be making use of an AI tool to write his speeches, to plan the campaigns, to plan everything.
Wow.
You have to remember, however, that using these tools, it's very flat. So nothing is ever going to, well, I shouldn't say ever, but likely in our lifetime, it would be very difficult to replace the emotional aspects of human language and connection with software. You get into the argument now with cybernetics and some of these other processes of cognitive awareness. I mean, I just think, did anybody ever remember the Terminator movies? I thought I was joking around with my buddy, and he has a business. I said, you need to create a chat bot and call it Skynet just to see what happens. And I don't think so, man. Truth be told, it redefines what connection is. So when we talk about connecting, Joel, and you said, well, isn't it about meeting face to face yet? Here we are, three people separated by hundreds of kilometers having a very vibrant, intellectual, connected conversation. And then we're reaching out and connecting to the listeners, which is another layer of connection. And then they're going to tell, wow, I really heard this really interesting podcast. You got to check it out. Yet another layer of connection. So what is connection, and how do you define it? Or do you define it? Do you just keep seeking to build upon it? It's a very interesting thought. What I perceive that we can do with some of isn't it interesting that in our society, the most helpful people are looked at as the least worthy? How much do daycare providers make, for example? Yet
Mm,
psychologically, you're half of who you're going to be by the time you're 3. You've imprinted your basic
Mm.
human construct by the time you're 5 years old. Kindergarten is a garden of children. We're growing them like flowers. Some of them are weeds. I've got 5 of them, so I can speak to weeds. But they're all wonderful and beautiful because a weed is only a flower in the wrong place.
mm,
So these neural atypical people, or people that are ADD, people that are ultra creative and don't do well in a school system, maybe now there's a way for them to connect and to learn and to be a
mm,
contributor.
Hmm.
Would it be now that we can utilize some of these AI constructs to change the paradigm of knowledge? I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I just know that
Mm.
everyone's running into this thing and not afraid of getting shot by the bullets coming at them, which is interesting.
My mind is blown. I'm going to be thinking about all this after for a while.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna have I'm gonna want to have another conversation about this.
Sure.
And I'd love that if you came back later to the show,
Yes,
once
thank
you get second brain going, and we can talk more about it, because I'm fascinated.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a
Well,
wonderful
Me
topic.
too.
I think your
I've-
listeners as well, and Quentin, I apologize for over speaking there. I think your listeners as well would do well to think this simple podcast. When I say simple, what I mean is it's not a lot of time to invest, and it's just a very vibrant conversation. So when I say simple, all I'm saying is it's 3 people talking and sharing an idea, but I wonder how big the ripples from this
Mm,
conversation will be.
Mhm.
I love that. The
Absolutely.
ripples.
Totally. And what you were saying just a minute ago about how to what's the definitions of connection, and then
Mhm.
how can we put this into our lives? Well, Joe and I have grappled with that for several months on figuring out what is it that is the juiciness that we want to talk about. What's the
Essence
topics?
of, yeah.
What's the essence? What's the meaning, the purpose? And we ended up doing a lot of brainstorming and coming up with lots of different ideas that all funnel around and end up drawing us down into this connection atmosphere and space. So yeah.
Is connection the touch? Is that the connection? Is it a physical? Is it emotional? If I told you a story that was very heartfelt, and you thought, oh my goodness, what a wonderful share. I can't believe how brave Chris was to share that, or a joke. I'm a fan of Lenny Bruce. Lenny Bruce was a very, very raunchy comic. And he said that the audience defines what funny is. Because he'll tell a joke, and if they laugh at it, it's funny. And if they go, ooh, too far. So they're actually comedians, when you look at it, who are typically very anxious and depressed individuals. They are setting the tone for a lot of the social constructs or social limits of how we connect with humor.
And I really love comedians. Actually, I'd say in the last 2 years, I've watched more stand-up comedy than ever in my life. And I really started to connect to stand-up comedy because I think because it was encompassing of everything I'm doing right now. It was me thinking, oh, I'm ready to use my voice. Oh, I love how this person just says how they feel and they don't care how people respond, or telling a story that you wouldn't normally hear, or being very vulnerable and, sharing something you might not always share. So I've started to really resonate with it. Yeah.
So you mean you've connected?
Yeah.
Connected.
Yeah. And you're right. Like, connection is mean so many different things. And it doesn't have to be touch. You're right. But I also know, for me personally, when I'm meeting people in a room, like if I'm collaborating on a project at work, I like to meet them in the room at work, more than I like to meet them on through the computer.
Well, the thing is, we all had COVID, and I like to say I'm just laced up from the waist up. You can't see my pajama pants and my slippers. It's all good in the hood.
And one other thing we talk a little bit about on this show is direction changes and reinventing ourselves, and pivoting or recalibrating when we need to. Do you have a time or a story you could share where maybe you've had to shift and reinvent what you're doing?
What time is it now? Honestly, it's
10 minutes left.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying,
I know you have many, I'm sure.
Well, that's the thing. I'm always reminded of that episode with Friends where Ross is directing in the couch, pivot, and they can't move. Yet sometimes that's what it feels like, where everyone's shouting at you to pivot, and you're like, I can't. I don't fit.
I'm stuck in a corner. Yeah.
I'm stuck.
Yeah.
I can't bend anymore. So being a parent was a real pivot for me. That was very interesting. So many moons ago, my first wife and I, and we still get along. We were 14 years old and dating. We went to driver's ed together. We went our separate ways and got together when in our late teens. And when I saw her the next time, she had a little dude in hand. So I saw her in the restaurant I was working with her mom. I said, "Oh, you've been busy." She says, "Yeah." I said, so what are you doing? Well, I'm doing this and that. And I said, "Oh, number is still the same?" She's like, "Yeah." She didn't expect me to call, but I did. And I kept calling her every day. And we were married and had a couple more kids. And I think we all have those moments that define who we are. And family to me is a really, really key definition. So when I became aware of who I was as a father, and my daughter has significant challenges. She was born with a tethered spinal cord. So it's a milder form of spina bifida where the spine doesn't quite close. So some people get to meet their heroes, some people don't. I gave birth to one. She's amazing. She went through 4 spinal surgeries inside 22 days. Her physiology was very odd, where the surgeon, who's literally done 10,000 of these, says to us, "Well, I've never seen physiology like your daughter." And you just go, "Oh, what else do you say to that?" So she has a rod inserted, bolted to her spine. It looks like a Frankenstein movie when you see the X-ray. From the top of her bum to the bottom of her neck, she's filleted like a fish to hold her upright, because at one point her spine literally looked like the letter S. But you know what? She's a happy little sock. She's a wonderful human being. She's creative. She's funny. She has challenges. She has attention deficit. She has dysthymia. She has central auditory processing disorder. There's physical challenges. And you know what? We play games. I play this board game called King of Tokyo. Shout out to the tabletop gamers there. But I don't give her any quarter. I'm a big games player, and if she wins, she wins. It took her about 3 years to beat me, but now it's about 50-50. And she's incredibly talented. She's very good. But I figured in the game of life, nobody's going to go easy. And as a matter of fact, there's people that'll cheat.
Yeah.
So she's going to
I never let my son win either. And people always thought I was mean. I was like, no.
No, it's good.
If everybody comes in first, nobody's first. Sorry.
It teaches determination and grit and resilience and that feeling when you've beaten your granddad or your dad or your mom. It's just amazing. You're like, finally.
In business, there's several conversations about people that have made it and lost it. Those people are going to survive because they know how to start from nothing. The people that had it given to them and they lose it, they don't know what to do, because they've never had to do that. Look at our king.
Participation awards.
King Charles. You hear all these stories about what he did with Diana and just horrible things. And really, though, did you expect anything different from somebody who had every whim, every thought was valid?
Yeah.
Talk about connection. That's a great disconnect, being surrounded by thousands of people and not really being able to talk to any of them because they're all servants. Or he had a station, he had a position to play. It was quoted to Robin. It was Robin Williams as an actor, not as a person. It was a movie that he was in where he said, "I used to think that being alone was the worst thing. It's actually being surrounded by people and feeling alone." It's been attributed, and that's again that missed connection. So what is connection? To come back to that, to circle over, this podcast is a lens of connection, a very good one. It's very simple because I turn on my feed, I let it go. I can just relax, kick back, and listen to the dulcet tones of Kulbaba proselytizing on AI, having a chuckle with Jolynn and her mom, and looking for Quentin's movie to come out. But it is a connection.
It's a connection, yeah. So, Chris, what do you think there is one thing that we all need in our lives to be successful in business or life?
I think you need to practice pardon. I think that's the biggest thing that I have learned. And for me personally, there's so many things that I wish I hadn't done, I wish hadn't happened to me. And then I realized, if they hadn't, I wouldn't have been who I am. So
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm.
okay. I've already survived all the worst days I've already had, which is a truth. I'm actually the
Mm.
youngest I've ever been, even though my daughter reminds me I'm an old man. Okay, well I am, but I'm still the youngest I've ever been. It's about the lens that you're looking and how you're connecting with yourself, and being able to really give yourself that pardon is critical. You're going to make mistakes. You
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
absolutely, as a business owner, some things that keep you up at night are, did I let my client down? Did I let my family down? So I think you need to enjoy your journey, the ups, the downs, the wins, the losses, and give yourself pardon for all your mistakes and give yourself permission to make another one.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I love that because it's a
I,
constant reminder, right? But I
Yeah.
think it's important in keeping ourselves going, you know.
and
Well,
it's an important process in
yeah.
maturing. Like when we're young, we're
Yeah.
not very kind. We don't know our emotions. We don't know our
No,
attachments and what drives us. And then
no.
as you grow up, you start figuring out things and you start connecting with yourself a little bit more. And hopefully you get to the point where you have self-compassion and you know what's working for you and what directions you shouldn't go in. But like
Yeah.
me, it took me a good 30 years of my life,
Yeah.
to sort of get into that.
Well, I'm a big fan of Carl Jung, Jungian psychology, talking about
Mm-hmm.
cyclical experiences. The first portion you don't know and it's not leveraged. The middle portion you do know who you are, yet it's not leveraged. And it's in your last third of your life, you're self aware, leveraging that self awareness. I've met
Mm,
people that are in their 20s that are in that third phase. I've met people in their 70s that don't seem to know how to get out of phase one.
yeah.
So it's a journey. And again, I feel that coming back to connecting with others, looking at I like what Quentin did. I'm going to do some more of that. Joe Lynn really gave me an idea that I maybe, even though don't like talking to my mom that much, maybe I have a different lens now as I understand she was just, love is an action. Love is a verb. It's not what we say, it's what we do. And she
Mm-hmm.
was just trying to love me the best way she knew how, even though it drove me nuts. Okay, it is what it is. I
Mm,
mean, you can't argue a fact. The sun comes out, sun comes down. You only get so many sunrises, but each one's different.
Mm-hmm.
So just take a few moments and appreciate something as common as a sunrise, yet as uncommon as a sunrise. Are you going to connect with that experience? Yes or no? That's up to you. I'm not going to judge. I'm just going to reflect.
That's great. I'm so
perfect.
glad you were here, Chris, and
Thank you.
Yeah.
so glad you came on the show. We are thrilled to have you here. And I learned so much today. Just to recap on a few things,
Hmm.
we learned about AI, and you talked about the second brain. We
Hmm.
talked about the importance of connection,
Hmm.
practicing pardon, about mirroring systems, integrations, the different layers of connection. That one really
Hmm.
resonated with me. And I think that's
Hmm.
something we should take further into
Hmm.
our conversations, Quentin.
Definitely.
Anything else that stuck out for you, Quentin?
The saying of being a mountain, considering that mountain aspect, and that made me feel, yeah, okay, where have I occasionally presented myself as the mountain, and
Hmm.
where should I eat some humble pie and connect more with others, for
Mm-hmm.
example.
Hmm.
Yeah, and
Um,
Yeah.
where can we give more too? I think is sometimes I do get in my head, I get heady about things about, well, what am I getting out of this, right? But I do think I need to be in that service mentality more frequently. I thought about that though. I think it's because I was in hospitality and in service industry growing
Oh,
up, and it was
yeah.
kind of thrust upon me.
Yep.
So now I'm like, serve me, serve me.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get
So.
Sometimes,
that, but I think everyone should have a service job in their teenage years.
Mhm,
totally
mhm.
There would
agree.
be a hell of a lot more nicer customer service out there and nicer
Totally
clients on
agree.
the end.
Yeah.
But I've always said, and I don't remember where I heard it, but for years I've said people that aren't nice to the server are not nice people.
Exactly.
They are
Yeah.
there.
Big
They're
red
there
flag.
to serve you. Yeah, it's
That's a good-
huge. I mean,
Mhm.
I always tip very well because a lot of people live on their tips, and if the service wasn't great, and if it was them, I'll leave the tip and I'll just say I hope you have a better time the next time. But it'll be around 10-15%. If I like it, I've tipped upwards of 30% before.
Mhm.
That's fine. If you can't afford it, don't go out. Very
Exactly.
simple to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
that's true. That's true.
Chris, if there's where could people get a hold of you? So our audience, if they want to get a hold of Chris, where's the
Absolutely.
best place?
One of the easiest places, well, if you Google my name, because I'm a little extra, you'll get about 16,000 results of Chris Kulbaba. First couple pages on a Google result, not the first couple results, first few pages are usually me, not the
Wow.
Alberta guy. There's an
You
Alberta
worked
guy. Don't
very
trust me.
hard.
Yeah. So, well, it's being in a lot of places and the Google juice from that. So you can find me on LinkedIn, simply Chris Kulbaba. That's that's an easy way to find me. You can get me through email, CP Kulbaba, Kulbaba, Christopher Paul, CP Kulbaba @gmail.com. I'll answer that. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter. I've done several different interviews. You can most importantly find me talking with the connectors.
Yes, because we are definitely having you back. So,
Definitely.
so I just want to thank you again, and that does it for today's show. Please make sure to check us out on all platforms, like and subscribe, and we will have more episodes and shows coming out soon. Thank you.
Come along for the journey and let's connect.